All right, hello everyone. My name is Hannah with the Rio Grande Watershed Conservation Education Initiative, also called RIGWICI for short. And this presentation is part of our bigger unit on decomposers found on our website. And today I wanted to give more background about decomposers and dive into the role that they play in ecosystems. So, talking about ecosystems, we have to talk about food chains. And you have probably seen a diagram like this of a very basic food chain. Food chains always start with a primary consumer, some type of plant that's getting its energy from the sun, and then a herbivore, an animal that eats plants, comes along and eats it, and then something else eats that creature, and then something else eats that creature, so on and so forth up the line. And energy and matter is transferred up along the food chain. And once we get to that top level predator, the eagle, the diagram just kind of stops. And we're left with, well, what happens to the energy and the matter of the eagle when it dies? So we have to turn to decomposers. Because let's say the eagle lived a long, happy life of eating frogs and snakes and mice and died of natural causes, was not eaten by anything. We would need decomposers to come along and break down that eagle, turn it back into nutrients in the soil that will eventually connect back up with plants, and the cycle will continue. The decomposer will close the food chain loop. And what I described is a very simplified version of what happens, because of course reality, it's a little bit more complex. So when we go back to our food chain, not all of the energy from one organism is transferred to the other organism when they eat it. Some of that energy is burnt as calories. So animals like us, even plants, need energy and will burn some of the energy they get from their food, and it will just kind of disperse in as heat into the environment. Also, a significant amount of matter is wasted along the way. So grasshoppers don't eat all the grass. There will be some that dies back in the winter. And we will also need decomposers then to break down that dead grass material. And anytime an animal eats another animal, they typically don't eat all of it, so there'll be some waste left over, and we'll need decomposers then as well to break down that animal. And as we learn from a young age that everyone poops, even frogs and snakes. So anytime an animal goes to the bathroom, there'll be more material for decomposers to break down. And lastly, let's say the eagle can't digest the bones of a snake, and so that will be left over for decomposers to take care of. So decomposers are involved not just at the very end of a food chain, but all along the way. And this material, this matter, like dead plants, old animals, feces, I'm going to refer to that as organic matter. And in this case, I'm using organic as something that was living or is living. You can also think of it as something that is natural. All right, and to understand decomposers a bit more, we have to visit their habitat. And in most cases, decomposers live in the soil. And so this is a picture of a soil food web which has lots of decomposers. We have bacteria and fungi. We have earthworms and snails and something called a nematode, which is basically a tiny little worm. And all of these creatures are living near the surface of the soil because that is where all the organic matter is. It's where the roots and the plants, and if an animal dies, it will lay on the ground and the decomposers will be right there where all the food is. All right, so we're going to be looking at different types of decomposers, and the first thing that probably comes to your mind when you're thinking of a decomposer is an earthworm. They're pretty common, and we also can see them with our own eyes, which is not always the case. So I'm going to focus on some really important decomposers that we can't always see because either they're teeny tiny, microscopic, or under the ground. And these tiny organisms are microorganisms, ones we cannot see with our own eyes, and they are incredibly abundant. For example, in a tablespoon of healthy soil, there will be around 7 billion organisms in that tablespoon of healthy soil. The world's population is also about 7 billion, so there is, for every person on Earth, an organism, a microorganism in a tablespoon of soil. It's pretty incredible. And most of those microorganisms, the most abundant type, are bacteria. And not only are bacteria the most abundant type of microbe in the soil, they are the most abundant type of life, form of life in general. Bacteria are everywhere. They are in the ice caps, they are in toxic boiling hot springs, they are in your body. They actually outnumber the cells in your body 10 to 1, which is generally pretty good because the bacteria in your body are helping you digest food so you can get more nutrients out of your food. And only about 1% of bacteria species are bad, or we call those pathogens because they cause disease. The majority are beneficial to us and the environment. Bacteria come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and are all microscopic, so they are only a few nanometers big. All right, so the previous picture I showed you a picture of bacteria under a microscope. Here is a way of studying bacteria in a lab where you don't need a microscope. You can see the bacteria with your own eyes. And this is a petri dish where someone has put some type of sample in the petri dish to grow. And the bacteria species will reproduce into a big enough number that we can actually look at them with our own eyes and study them. So the bacteria in the soil are pretty diverse. There's at least 1,000 bacteria species in a gram of soil. And this diversity is really important to the soil health and the soil ecosystem, but it also has a benefit to us because a lot of our antibiotics have been found by studying bacteria and the compounds they make in the soil. Bacteria also are beneficial to plants. Some have teamed up with plants to form a symbiotic relationship. So this plant pictured here has grown nodes or nodules on its roots, which are little houses for bacteria, a specific type of bacteria that will provide that plant with a form of nitrogen that it can use. And so fungus is the other big category of decomposers I want to cover. And when you think of fungus or fungi, probably you're thinking of mushrooms, the kind you can eat or get at a grocery store. But that is not the majority of a fungus. Most of it is underground in root-like networks, little tendrils called hyphae. And you can also think of it as a tree producing fruit to reproduce because fungus produces the mushroom just to produce spores, and the majority of the actual fungus is in that root-like network. So we classify we can classify fungus or fungi, plural, in two basic categories. One that really concentrate on being decomposers and breaking down dead leaves, other things that have died, and other ones that team up with plants and actually connect their hyphae to plant roots to send chemicals and to provide water and nutrients to the plant. And we have given this type of fungus a name, and they are called mycorrhizae fungi. And the majority of plants use this fungus. About 90% have this symbiotic relationship with mycorrhizae. And they really help increase the surface area of roots so that the plant can have access to so much more nutrients and water than it otherwise could. Fungus is also really important in soil structure because it holds the soil together a lot more so that it prevents erosion. And it also will create channels and air pockets, which is helpful for the soil. And so when it does rain, the soil will be able to soak up so much more water and hold it over a longer period of time. So it's really important to have healthy decomposers and fungi in your soil. All right, so I have mentioned previously of mutualistic or symbiotic relationships between decomposers and plants. And for a relationship to be symbiotic, there has to be a give and take. So we know that microorganisms and decomposers are providing plants with decomposing matter and nutrients, but we're going to take a look about what is it for them. What are they getting from the plant to make that relationship work? And to understand that, we have to review what plants do, how they get their energy. And so plants get their energy from photosynthesis, where they take water and carbon dioxide, and using the energy of the sun, they will make sugars. And sugars are made with a bunch of carbon, and all that carbon is coming from the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And those compounds, carbon molecules and sugars, have different destinations. One that we typically think of is energy. So a plant needs energy to function, to make all its compounds, to grow. Some of that sugar will be used as energy. Another big category is the actual building blocks of a plant. So the material of the stem and the leaves and the roots are all made out of carbon molecules that the plant created through photosynthesis. Seeds and fruit are also made with those compounds. An apple is really sweet with natural sugars that a plant created and sent to its fruit. And the most surprising one that we don't always think of is microbe recruitment. What is that? Well, the plant will actually send some of its photosynthetic products, all those compounds and sugars, to the roots and allow bacteria and other things to come and eat those compounds. And it's the way that the plant recruits decomposers. So this is a better picture of that. This is the end of a root that's leaking all those sugars into the soil, and that provides food for bacteria to come in and eat it. And then while they're there, they will also help break down and help the plant access nutrients that the bacteria can break down. So this is a really important process in the food chain and the cycle of life, because it's the the link that ties the end to the beginning. This relationship of plants giving sugars to decomposers and them providing water and nutrients to the plant. They are closing the loop of the food chain. All right, so I have just shown you a bunch of diagrams and pictures. You're probably wondering what this has to do with your life, or what this has to do with what we as humans do. Like, what does it matter to us? And well, a lot of people take care of plants, farmers and gardeners, if you own a lawn. And if you don't actively take care of plants, you eat plants on a regular basis. And so plant health is really important to us and to every living thing in our world. And the best way to take care of plants, if you're a farmer or gardener, is to feed your decomposers. Because once you feed your decomposers, they will supply your plants with a steady supply of nutrients that they need to create food and to grow. And there are tons of different ways that we do this. So I'm just going to go over a few, but you can also think of your own ways that you can feed decomposers if you have a garden, let's say. So one of a really common one is to compost, where you put a bunch of organic material together, let it break down, and then you can add it back into a garden, a farm, to provide decomposers food. You're also putting decomposers in the garden and a bunch of organic material. Another one, also common in gardens and landscaping, is to add mulch around your plants. The mulch, the dead, like sticks or straw, will provide some food for decomposers, but it also will protect them from all the elements and protect that top layer of soil where all those organisms are living. Another great way to feed decomposers is livestock, because cows go to the bathroom a lot, and cow patties provide a lot of food for decomposers who will transform a cow patty back into the soil and make healthy grass. And the last one I'll mention is cutting down on plowing, and when you're harvesting, leaving some of the root and the stalk of the plant behind, because when there's roots in the ground, that will really protect the soil and also provide decomposers with some food source, something to break down throughout the off season. And so when you plant again, there'll still be lots of decomposers left there to start providing your crops with nutrients again. So that is my video on decomposers and how they're very important in our ecosystems. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're interested in more educational content, you can visit our website at rgwcei.org. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.